Hi, my name is Amanda from Mircat, and today we'll be talking to David O'Brien, who is a CEO and co-founder of Mircat, and our topic today will be around removal of the debt review process. Hi David, and welcome.
Hey Amanda, thanks for being here.
My first question would be around how does one get removed from the debt review process?
Sadly, this is one of the most searched terms in South Africa for a couple of reasons. So people embarked on the process years ago and have settled their debts, and now they need to get out, but they actually don't know how. Some people, while they were in the process, their debt counsellor disappeared, so they don't know who to talk to. Some people didn't finish the process and they want to be removed. And some people are in the process but now feel the need to access credit and want to be removed. Yes. So each of those people, it's slightly different. What is important is that you don't fall prey to scammers who are out there enticing you to pay 6,000 or 10,000 or 12,000, and they will tell you they will lift your debt review. I've spoken to so many people who've signed up with those people, paid their money, and then suddenly the guy won't take their phone calls. So, you need to be very careful who you're working with. The best and legal way to get out of debt review is to settle your debts. And unfortunately for many people, that's tough medicine to take. But actually, if you've signed up, if you have a granted court order to exit debt review, you have to settle your debts. Once your debts are settled, then a debt counsellor can issue what's called a clearance certificate. And as Mircat, we make that a very simple and painless journey. You can go to our website, you can search mircat.coza, go for clearance, and then you go into a simple digital process where we will then assess what you need, depending on where you're at. If you're currently in debt review and you're making your debt payments, but now you feel, no, you want to access credit, if I'm honest, chances are it's too early for you. You're probably not ready to access credit. What you can think about doing is accelerating the process, paying more each month, or maybe asking to settle specific debts, which then brings in the term of the process. But the best way to get out of debt review is to be debt-free, because remember, that's why the person started, because they were overburdened by their debts.
Who would you say is eligible to get out of the process?
So again, there's all these different types of people. To be eligible to exit debt review, you have to have settled your debts. There was a time when people thought they could go to the court and the judge could say, you can exit debt review. There has been some precedent decisions that that's not possible anymore. But again, depending on your status. So some people are on A status. Now, A status means you've only applied for debt review. So you're not actually being flagged. But they think they're in debt review because they're not getting loans. But chances are they're not getting loans for other reasons, nothing to do with the A flag. If you have a C, a D3, a D4 flag, then you are in different stages of the process. And if you come to Mircat, we can assess where you are and we can give you some advice from that point. If you are in D4, it means your court order has been granted. And unfortunately for those people, they need to get through those debts and settle those debts. Once the debts are settled, we just need the settlement letters and then we can issue a clearance certificate. I would strongly encourage people, instead of giving 10,000 rands to some guy you've seen on Facebook who promises you to settle your debt review, rather take the 10,000 rands and get a settlement letter on one of your debts or two of your debts, because that's a much better way to go.
That's actually very interesting, because around social media, till today, we still see some people who say that they can get people's court order rescinded, while that's actually not true. So that's very insightful, David. Now, how much would you say the process take to get one's flag removed?
So when somebody comes to Mircat to get the flag removed, it takes about a week to do the assessment and the work, and we often have to transfer the client from another debt counsellor to Mircat. It then takes us about a week to issue the clearance certificate, assuming everything is in order. And then we tell customers to wait for about a month for all the different credit bureaus and the banks to update their systems. And then they are available to get a loan. But I also say to people, just because we've issued a clearance certificate doesn't mean you're going to get a loan automatically. And people often come back and say, hey, I didn't get a loan. That could be down to affordability. So you still may not be able to afford another loan. Or potentially your credit score. So some people think that if debts prescribe, they can get cleared and then they will get a loan. But actually they must remember that the banks know if they give you a debt and it has prescribed. And different banks have different credit scores. You don't have one credit score. So if you let a loan prescribe with ABSA, then the chances are that ABSA are not going to look very favorably on the next application because they know there has been a loan that wasn't settled on their books. Capitec may not know about that ABSA loan, so you might do better with Capitec. But again, there's many reasons why you do or don't get a loan. And as Mircat, we look to help people to answer those questions where we can.
And for our services, how much would you say we charge clients?
So when a client comes to us who's with another debt counsellor and they want a clearance certificate, depending if it's a, let's call it a simple process for a single applicant, we charge 1,150 rands. Sometimes customers pay in cash, in which case we ask for an extra 50 rands to cover what the banks charge for the cash fees. If it's a joint application, we charge a bit more, but it's not 2 times, it's a bit more, 1.5 times. Some consumers, when they come to us, they might still have another 8 or 9 months left of payments to go on their debt plan. We will let them and we will manage those debts as Mircat, and then the clearance certificate is actually free at the end of the process. So provided you have been with Mircat for enough time. Another important point to note is that sometimes people signed up with a debt counsellor but made no payments. Those debt counsellors, that previous debt counsellor has done the work, they've negotiated with the banks, they've created a proposal, they're entitled to be paid for that work. So sometimes when we go and request a file from an old debt counsellor, the debt counsellor says, I can't give you Amanda's file because she hasn't paid me for the work I did. So then we have to tell the client that they must pay the previous debt counsellor first before we can do the transfer. So that's also another thing to remember, depending on what status you left your previous debt counsellor with.
What should consumers be aware of when it comes to lawyers and the debt review removal process?
So obviously the legal profession plays an active role in debt counselling. As a debt counsellor, we do the numbers and the negotiations with the banks, but then we rely on our legal colleagues to get the court order granted. So an attorney will present the plan to the magistrate, who then approves it and makes it a court order. That court order process is very important because that's what gives legal certainty to the customer, which is really important if they have a home or a car, because then the court order is granted and it protects those assets. Equally, there are other lawyers operating who believe that they can take money from customers to remove the debt review process. I think that's in the, let's call it the shadier parts of the industry. Like any industry, there's the shady parts. In our experience, customers often end up paying fees and don't get the resolution that they require. So we prefer to do the proper process. We think a debt counsellor is the person to issue a clearance certificate. We can do that after you've settled your debts. We have a very simple online process that you can access on our website, mircat.coza. Just search for clearance. You can go through the whole process front to back digitally, and then we issue a clearance certificate, which takes between about 4 and 5 weeks to be granted.
Why would you say consumers must consider Mircat to remove themselves?
The obvious answer is because we do the job properly. Again, I'm active on social media. I can see a lot of advertisements from people who say, we'll remove you from debt review, we guarantee you a loan, blacklisted or not, blah, blah, blah. But it's important to understand what removing from the process means. So some consumers think that if they get a Form 17W, they're removed. That's not the case. To get removed from debt review, you need a clearance certificate, and a debt counsellor can issue that certificate if the debts are settled. So we often help consumers whose debt counsellors have disappeared. We help consumers who they're not happy with their debt counsellor. They transfer to Mircat. We will do an assessment. We will see what's required, and then we'll help that customer get to where they want to get to. We do find that the customers often come to us saying, I'm flagged and I want to get a loan. Okay? And what's been interesting for us is we've discovered that 20% of those people are not flagged, which I found initially quite surprising. But basically what it tells me is the person has been refused a loan. They assume it's because of a debt review flag, but actually the reality is they're being declined for other reasons. So we're introducing a product which will help customers understand why they have been declined a loan. We're calling it a creditworthy product, and it will bring together all of the information that the banks look at, and then it will give you an insight as to why you have been declined, or more importantly, if you want to buy a house, how likely you are to get a house. And then we will give you some tips as to how you can improve that. So again, as Mircat, it's not just about answering the question the client asked, which is, please give me a clearance certificate. It's actually about saying, how can we help you get a loan? How can we help you move on with your life?
Thank you, David. The information has been very insightful. I'm sure that a lot of people are finding themselves in this situation will now know what steps to take moving forward. Just remember that you can visit our website to to click on the link and submit your information should you require a clearance certificate. It's Mircat, www.mircat.co.za. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Amanda.